I never thought my own in-laws could be so bold. They walked into my business like they owned it, demanding free access to every decision, every profit, and even the client list. At first, I tried to stay calm, thinking maybe family should be family. But their arrogance only grew. They acted like they were entitled to what I had built from scratch. And when my spouse started siding with them, I realized this wasn't just about control, it was personal. What they thought was generosity became their biggest mistake. I started this business with nothing, no investors, no loans, not even family support. The nights were long, money was tight, and I sacrificed everything to make it succeed. Slowly, the business grew, and I finally had something that was truly mine. I always thought family would celebrate my success, not try to take it, but my in-laws had a completely different idea. To them, my business wasn't an achievement, it was a resource they could exploit. Subtle hints soon turned into bold statements. We should be part of this, we can help manage, they said. At first, I tried to ignore it, thinking it would blow over, but their visits became more frequent, their demands louder, and their expectations impossible. Even my spouse, whom I trusted completely, began suggesting compromises, urging me to just let them help. That's when I realized this was no small issue, it was the beginning of a nightmare I hadn't anticipated, and one that would test not only my business but my trust, my patience, and my family. Their first real demand shocked me: unrestricted access to all financials. They claimed it's family money now, even though they had never contributed a single cent. I politely refused, explaining the ownership and effort I had put in, but their response was venomous. Family helps each other, they insisted, their smiles hiding a dangerous arrogance I hadn't seen before. To my shock, my spouse even started agreeing. Maybe they have a point, they said, and I felt my blood boil. The person I trusted most in the world was siding with them. I tried reasoning, I tried compromise, but nothing worked. The more I gave, the more they wanted. Soon, they were attempting to influence staffing decisions, client relationships, and even pricing. Every day, I felt my control slipping further. My stress skyrocketed, my nights became restless, and the betrayal from my spouse cut deeper than I could ever have imagined. I realized that if I didn't take a stand now, I would lose not just my business, but my dignity, my principles, and the trust that should exist within my own family. Something had to change, and fast. They began arriving unannounced, expecting coffee, tours, and detailed explanations for every single decision I made. My employees felt the pressure immediately, confused and scared, unsure whose orders to follow or how to navigate the growing tension. At one point, my spouse suggested, "Let's just let them help, it'll make things easier," and in that moment, I realized that what they called compromise was really surrender. One day, they demanded access to client contracts, insisting we should know who's paying what. I told them no, but they laughed as if my refusal were only temporary. Their sense of entitlement seemed limitless. They truly believed that being family granted them automatic ownership rights. Soon, veiled threats began: if you don't let us in, don't expect any family support. I instinctively started documenting everything: emails, meetings, and interactions, because I knew this couldn't continue unchecked. Every encounter grew more tense, the air thick with accusations, guilt-tripping, and subtle manipulation. The stakes were higher than I had ever imagined, and my patience was fraying with each passing day, pushing me closer to a breaking point. The breaking point came during a family lunch they insisted on holding at the business office. My spouse, the person I had trusted implicitly, openly sided with them in front of my employees. "They have a right to know everything," they said, smiling at their parents as if I were being unreasonable. I felt completely blindsided, betrayed, and humiliated. I excused myself, knowing that confronting them in that moment would only escalate disaster. Later that night, alone and replaying the events in my mind, I realized something crucial: I could no longer rely on family loyalty or marital unity to protect my business. I needed to act strategically, or everything I had worked for would be at risk. Their entitlement was boundless, but so was my resolve. I began researching legal options, corporate restructuring, and financial safeguards to secure my assets. It was no longer about compromise or avoiding conflict. It had become a battle to reclaim control, enforce boundaries, and teach them the consequences of overstepping their limits. I immediately consulted a business attorney to discuss my options and figure out how to protect what I had built. We went over strategies for formalizing ownership, restricting access, and implementing airtight legal protections. I created clear, binding agreements specifying exactly who could access finances, client lists, and operational decisions. Contracts were revised to prevent any unauthorized involvement, and I simultaneously strengthened internal protocols, including employee permissions, secure data storage, and approval hierarchies. Every communication remained professional, but I carefully collected evidence of their previous entitlement claims, knowing it could be essential later. My spouse was hesitant, still processing their own role in the conflict, but I insisted on transparency. If they think this business is theirs, they're in for a shock. I restructured the business entity to clarify ownership percentages, 100% firmly in my name, and ensured that any future access would require signed, legal permission, something my in-laws could never obtain. Meanwhile, I subtly allowed them to continue believing they had influence, all while preparing the ultimate reveal. Every phone call, every email, every visit was documented meticulously. The stage was perfectly set for the moment they would finally realize that their entitlement had limits, and those limits were legally, indisputably binding. The moment of reckoning came when they tried to access the financial software remotely. Their faces froze in shock as they discovered their credentials were blocked and automatic legal notices had been sent. My spouse, finally seeing their panic, began to grasp the full severity of their arrogance. Every email, every message, every past demand and manipulation was documented and ready for reference, leaving no room for excuses. I calmly explained, everything you demanded without contribution or agreement has been legally restricted. Their faces flushed red with humiliation. They had assumed family ties granted them unlimited rights. Employees whispered among themselves, aware of the drama unfolding behind the scenes, which only magnified the in-laws' embarrassment. My spouse apologized profusely for siding with them earlier, admitting they had underestimated the situation. I didn't need to celebrate their discomfort. The legal and operational barriers did all the talking. The in-laws were forced to leave empty-handed, confronted with the reality that they had no claim, no access, and no influence. It was a silent victory, but one that resonated deeply with me. Their sense of entitlement had been firmly checked, permanently, and I felt a profound sense of justice and relief. After the dust settled, my business ran smoother than ever. Employees felt secure, clients never noticed any disruption, and the daily operations returned to normal. I worked to rebuild trust with my spouse, who had learned a hard lesson about respecting family boundaries and loyalty. The in-laws attempted to reach out later, subtly hinting at reconciliation, but I remained firm. Boundaries could not be compromised. They had learned, perhaps painfully, that entitlement does not trump effort, investment, or legal rights. I felt a mix of relief and empowerment, knowing I had protected not only my business but also my dignity and the principles that mattered most. The experience taught me that boundaries must be enforced with both courage and strategy. Family can either be supportive or opportunistic, and recognizing the difference early is essential. From this point forward, my business is mine, my decisions are mine, and any attempt at unwarranted intrusion will be met with the same unwavering firmness. Their arrogance and sense of entitlement cost them dearly. They had assumed that family ties automatically gave them rights, and they were painfully, undeniably wrong. What began as gentle requests quickly escalated into humiliation and regret for them, while I emerged stronger, wiser, and more determined than ever. My spouse and I rebuilt trust, learned the importance of boundaries, and now run the business with confidence and clarity. This experience proved that protecting your hard work is not selfish, it's necessary. Family can either support or destroy, but justice always prevails when you stand firm.